Good morning. Today we're going to go to a passage that we're all familiar with. It's the Pool of Bethesda. And if I ever had to name one, which I don't do very often, I'm going to call this one today the Church at the Pool of America. All right? That was my first one and only one right there. I'm not going to do that anymore. So let's go to John chapter 5, and we'll get into the scripture, and then I'm going to give you a little history, I'm going to give you a little geography, and then we'll break these scriptures down. John chapter 5, is everybody there? John chapter 5, starting in 1, says, "After this there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep's gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at certain times into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he had. Now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been in that condition a long time, he said to him, 'Do you want to be made well?' The sick man answered him, 'Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me.' Jesus said to him, 'Rise, take up your mat, and be made well.'" All right, we're going to stop there. Let's go down verse for a verse first. All right. After this says there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. This was one of the feasts that required every male within a 20-mile radius of Jerusalem to go. More than likely, it's common belief that this here was the Passover. So every male of age had to go, that lived within a 20-mile radius anyway, had to go to Jerusalem to observe these feasts. The 3 feasts they had to do was Passover, Pentecost, and then the Feast of Tabernacles. So they were going to leave Galilee. They had been on their mission and ministry in Galilee, and it says that they went up to Jerusalem. Now I'm going to give you a little geography lesson, topography. Anybody that knows that Robert and I have been doing some hiking, and when we went up in eastern Kentucky, we found some pretty good hills. We put in about 7 miles up there of a pretty good walk. Galilee, where they're at, depending on the location, you've got an upper Galilee and a lower Galilee. I'm going to, just for the sake of using it as an example, I'm going to say they were around the Sea of Galilee at this time, which is going to put them about 70 miles from Jerusalem. At the Sea of Galilee, you're roughly 700 feet above sea level. And when it says they're going up to Jerusalem, they're going up because it's about 2,700, about 26 so feet above sea level there. So it is going up. Not only that, they do not have paved roads like we have here in the county and in the states. It's pretty rough, and that 70 miles that I was talking about depends if you go over Mount Tabor in order to get there. So if they go around, depending, so you're looking at let's say an average of 15 miles a day. You're talking about a 4 or 5 day trip just to go up to Jerusalem. So not an easy task in itself. If you have seen the topography of Israel, it's not a good walking distance anyway. You get there. Not only that, you're going to have a big crowd. And some of the other studies we've talked about with the Good Samaritan, traveling in the byways, whenever they know that there's going to be a lot of people out traveling, it brings out not only the best, it's going to do what God told them to, it's going to bring out the worst to try to rob them along the way. So there's a lot of obstacles here that's going into this place, and just that few words there that a lot of times in a scripture like this we'll read over, that up, there's a big up there, okay, because they were having to work to get there. It was not an easy travel, and you're talking about a 4 or 5 day travel just to get to Jerusalem. All right, it says, now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. Give you a little history now. First of all, the pool of Bethesda means mercy or grace in Hebrew. Whenever they go up to the sheep gate, there was a, well, let me go ahead and talk about the pool first, because that's where a lot of people have some controversy. For a long time, they didn't think that this pool existed. They thought it was something that John had put into his writings as to enhance the story of the pool, because they had never found any pools in their archaeological digs that had 5 porches. Okay, you've got a pool, and most generally they're 4-sided, and they've got porches around them. These healing porches, they call them as mikvahs. They had the porches that went all the way around them, and they had never found anything like this. So they thought this here was something that John had put in there to enhance the story. Come 1888, doing an archaeological dig of a church in that area, they found 2 pools that were side by side that you could tell had porches around it, but also had one dividing them, hence the 5 porches. So it was not a figment of John's imagination. It was truly a pool that was there, and it was used. Now, after that, people got to thinking, well, this pool was here as a sheep at the sheep's gate, because when they brought the sheep in to the temple for the sacrifice, they'd run them through this pool as a cleansing means, and they would be clean and ready for the sacrifice. We can sort of dispel that too, because this pool's in place was like 13 meters deep. So it was going to be too deep for that. So it was actually a mikvah, which was a healing pool. If you ever see a picture of it, and it is there, they've got it dug out now, and it's can be seen. You've got an upper pool and you've got a lower pool, and it's fed by a spring, comes out and comes over into the other one, and it's sort of self-cleansing. So the pool does exist, and the sheep's gate itself is there. They've come to the conclusion that's where people brought their sheep for sale when they bring them out from outside the gates of the city. They bring them in there for sale. So it is a sheep's gate. All these things are there and they're visible. The sheep's gate is on the east side of the temple walls, and a lot of the stuff was destroyed when the temple fell in 70 A.D. So there's your history lesson for the day. It says, in these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. We in history, in these accounts, people would come in here and they'd be brought in here on a daily basis. As we see in the later scriptures here, they was waiting for a moving of the water. And tradition told them that each day someone or an angel would come down, stir the water, and I like to think of a cleansing of the water, and then the first one in after that would be healed of any sickness that they would have. So you can imagine what kind of draw that this place would have for the sick people. It's going to, and anybody that is sick is going to look for anything and any means in order to overcome that sickness. So it had a big multitude of people, hey big guy, and it had a big multitude of people that was coming here in order to find that stirring of the water. Now a little later on I'm going to draw a correlation between our churches. Our churches are drawing people in and getting people here waiting for the stirring of the water. Okay? And we can draw that correlation through these scriptures, and hoping for that miracle to take place in our life each day. It says, For an angel went down at certain times into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well. Okay? If you would, let's draw a picture of this of the first thing in the morning. You've got people coming out. In this case here, this person could not walk. As I keep bringing up in some of my lessons, this was not a politically correct pool. It was not ADA accessible. Somebody had to take this guy. He could not walk, pack him out to the porches, and wait for the stirring of the water. You're going to have others the same way. You had people coming, going, bringing them in, leading the blind into their sitting spot. More than likely, they sit in about the same place every day. In this case here, where the guy was trying to get to the water, they may try getting him closer to the water because he always had trouble getting there. So I tried drawing this picture in my head and visualize this of people trying to be the one that won the moving water lottery for that day, if you might say. All right? And they were there seeking. Now, another thing that I want to draw to your attention, because I'm going to bring this up just a little later. This guy had been here how long? He had 38 years been paralyzed. Okay? And this day, in the day and time that we're talking about, how did these people survive? How did they survive? I mean, how was their living made during these times? Farming. You had that industry. Now, if someone's paralyzed, how are they going to make a living? All right? They were here by the sheep's gate for that reason also. As people coming in and out, they were collecting alms. They were collecting money. In this particular location, people coming in and, let's say, selling sheep, and as they are going back out, that could be a pretty good location. All right? I want to keep that in mind, because as we look at our society today, we can tell that when people get used to that, are they searching that healing as much as they could be? And I've never considered that in this lesson before. This guy may not have worked real hard to get down to the water. Just my own thoughts. I'm throwing it out there. But I do know that in our society today, if you ever go to a national park, they'll say, do not feed the bears because they will become dependent on it. All right? Our federal government can learn the same thing. All right? Let's not do anything to make our people dependent upon us. Okay? That's my political statement for the day. He says, now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. I'll give you a little number game here that I thought was interesting. We know through past studies, what is the number for perfection or completion? 7. Have you ever considered a lot of these numbers have a different meaning? Anybody know what the number for God is? The number for God is 3. All right? Never knew that. Through this study, what about a new beginning? How many days are in a week? 7 days. What's the beginning of the new week? The 8th day. All right? So, we don't know if John knew this and was another one of those inclusions to enhance the story. But my personal thoughts is God had that there for a reason. All right? God gives new beginnings. 38. All right? If you want to break it down even further, and this is a stretch, but I thought it was interesting anyway. 5 times 7. 5 means grace. 7 is perfection or complete. All right? You add God to that, you get both. Okay? 38. So, just a little number game there I thought you might find interesting. But this guy had been here for 38 years, and in this time period, what does that equal to as far as a lifespan? He's about done. All right? He'd been that way his entire life. All right? And that leads me to believe, well, he's pretty doomed. His hope was running out. We see that, as he mentions a little later, he had been waiting there at the pool, waiting for the waters to stir, but there's always somebody beating him to it. And that is a typical teaching on this, that there was always an excuse. If you look at the guy, he's sitting up here, and that's what led me to the thought, well, maybe this guy liked that. He had his living made. He could lay there. Yeah, he did have his infirmity, and I may be 10 miles off. But he did have an excuse. Even when his hope was sitting right beside him, he still had an excuse. All right, let's look a little further. He said, when Jesus saw him lying there in that condition a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" Look at his direct answer. The sick man answered, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool." All right? That was his direct answer. If you had been paralyzed for 38 years and somebody comes up to you and says, "Do you want to be made whole?" I just don't have anybody put me in the water. My reply is going to be, darn tootin', I want it. I'll take it right now. All right? He was looking at the physical of this pool as his hope, when his hope was sitting right next to him. He may not have recognized it at that time, but if somebody came up to me with that kind of remark, he would have got my attention. Okay? Sick man said, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down in front of me." Continues on with these excuses. The verse that I've been waiting to get to. What does Jesus say? "Rise, take up your bed, and walk." Whenever I was preparing to teach this, and most especially after looking at the video from the last teaching and how I stumbled and stuttered and stumbled my way through it, I told Bob, I said, my trouble is when I'm preparing for a lesson, taking down notes and trying to get it just the way I want it, and then I get lost on my notes and I start stuttering. I said, I'm going to try something different. I said, if God has ever blessed me with anything, it is the ability to talk. And I'm going to do it, and I'm going to try hoping to do this without notes, without stuttering. And I've already said, all right, 2 times I know of. It may have been 3. All right? 4? All right? I'm glad somebody's back there keeping that as at least 90% less than last time. So I'm moving on up. But I wanted to draw the correlation of this and our churches today. We have got people coming to churches today, and they see the church as that pool of hope. And I'm tickled to death that they are. But we overlook the fact that when our hope comes with us, we're the one that brings our hope with us, and we don't have to come to the church in order to receive that hope. I'm tickled to death that people come here and they want to get together and lean on us. I used this as an example one time. Whenever we lay hands on someone in prayer, we do that as a transfer of hope. Anybody, I'm sure most of you have aired up an air tank or a tire with an air tank. If you've got an air tank here that's got 100 pounds of pressure in it, how much of that can you put in your flat tire? Put half of it. All right. When people come here and they want us to lay hands on them, we can transfer that. Anybody who was at the men's meeting the last time, we saw a transfer of that power. All right, and you'd have to be in there to know what I'm talking about. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. All right. Then what happens to that air tank? It balances out. You balance pressure. That's the same way with our prayer life. when people come here and want us to lay hands on them, we have that ability. And I'm tickled to death they do that. But where does that air source and that power come from? You don't have to come to the church to reach that. You don't have to come to this pool in order to receive that power or that hope. You bring him with you. All right? 5. Sorry. That was 5 times. You bring him with you. Your hope is always sitting right next to you. We don't have to come to Brother Albert in order to receive hope. Yes, I'm glad we do. You don't have to come to Brother Bob to receive hope. Your hope is out there. He's there warning you. And we as people need to quit waiting for the stirring of the waters. We have got to stir on. Let's jump in the pool and stir it ourselves. Okay? And search for that hope on an individual basis. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we want to look at the church as a whole. It's very easy for us to complain about things taking place in our country, but as churches, we're still waiting for the waters to move. Let's look at some of the things that's taken place in, well, I missed it by 2 years, I guess. Let's back up to 1962. 1962 was the first law passed saying it was unconstitutional to have prayer in our schools. And if you look back through history, you had some uprisings of the church, some murmurings. But our enemies, the enemy, he made bigger waves. We're still waiting for the waters to stir. Let's go to, I think it was 1973, Roe versus Wade. Still in effect today. They said it's unconstitutional for us to determine if a woman can have an abortion. That is their right to choice, but under the, the freedom of their privacy. All right? We, as churches, we mumbled a little bit. We grumbled a little bit. But the enemy stirred the waters better. We come on up to 1980, and they found it unconstitutional for us to have the Ten Commandments on public buildings, or in public buildings. The churches rumbled a little bit. They grumbled a little bit. The enemy grumbled better. We as churches need to wait, or are waiting for the waters to stir. We as churches have made every excuse. It will not do us any good. It will not do us any good to grumble. It will not do us any, because they're going to pass these laws anyway. This is these laws. We have the right to make that change. We need to make our voice heard. We need to quit waiting for the waters to stir and stir them up ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, the Paralytic Church of America. All right? The Paralytic Church in the pool of America. Let's phrase it that way. We have got ourselves into the shape. How can a church change that? Are we willing to stir the water? Are we willing to defend our faith? Everybody says, yeah, I'll do it. Peter said the same thing. To what extent are you ready to defend your faith? How much are you wanting to stir the water? Good example. You're going to go to Syria, where 20 Christians were beheaded a couple of weeks ago. What they got now? 150? They got captured down the streets and burned alive. Are you waters? Are you ready to stand for your faith? It's easy for us to look at that and say, you know, I'm in no direct threat of that happening. Are we not? Go online and type in Paris training camps in Tennessee. As you got one in Paris, you got one in Dover. You realize that we are a high priority target here in the county. You got Kentucky down, you got Barkley down. You take those out, you take out South and all their power. That's not to mention the flooding that's going to take place from there in Louisiana. At what point are you ready to stand up for your faith? Are you ready to defend your faith? I know we've got a group coming in to the hotel who was wanting to get with the churches. They come here each year, as you've heard me mention them before, the Jewish group, wanting to get with the church and say, do you know what's taking place in your own community? Because they deal with them each year. They come and start messing with them down there because they are what they call Jews. So they have to deal with it, and so that is something we're going to have to stand up and be ready for. At what point are you going to quit making excuses? And I say you, I'm talking about the church as a whole. And be ready to defend your faith. It's easy for us to say, oh yeah, I'm ready to go right now. Then the rooster crows. Well, he's been crowing since 1962. And we still have not taken up, I'll go back to the other teaching I've done, we have not taken up our armor and gone to battle. If we have, the other team's doing it better. And I don't know about you all, but I'm competitive enough. First of all, I know who wins in the end, and I want to be on that team. I am on that team, but as I talk to some of my guys, I don't want a first and a third quarter player. God don't either. He wants all of you suited up, ready to go at any given time. Every second, be ready to fight. So, I have said a whole bunch in a short time. But, as a church, as Sanctuary Church of God, is God telling you yet, take up your mat. Take up your mat and walk. If we go on and study this a little further, the guy still made excuses later. We have, when he was with the Pharisees, they was condemning him. No, you're not even supposed to be packing your mat today. All right? 6 times. You shouldn't even be packing your mat today. He said, who gave you that authority? He said, that man that healed me up there, he told me to take up my mat and walk. He's still laying the blame. Okay? We don't need to lay the blame any longer. It's not somebody else's fault because these laws are getting passed. It's not somebody else's fault that these people are coming into our country and threatening to take away our freedom to worship that cross, Jesus Christ, whatever. It's not up to them. We're the only ones that can do anything about it. So with that, I put to you all today, as Sanctuary Church of God, take up your mat. Be ready to fight. Be ready to walk. With that said, that's a short lesson. I thank you all very much.